You told us on election day we hadn't heard the last of you. Well, that chapter's closing fast. As we've covered extensively, the reign of Super Mayor Tiffany A. Henyard is nearing its end. She's officially been ousted from her role in Thornton Township, removed from the village of Dalton, and before long, she won't be holding any elected office at all. But here's the latest twist. We previously reported that she was raking in somewhere north of $250,000, but under $300,000 between her two roles. Well, that's now been blown out of the water. A final audit from local news sources reveals she was actually pulling in more than $300,000, plus additional perks. The real kicker? Taxpayers were subsidizing her extravagant travel, first-class flights all over the country. Thanks to a $600 per day stipend she collected any time she stepped outside Dalton or even Illinois. That's right, luxury travel, fully funded by public money. She was basically vacationing on the taxpayers' dime. It's scandalous from every angle. And somehow, despite all the facts, there are still diehard supporters defending her. You'll hear things like, she's doing what men have done for years, or she gives back with food giveaways. What more do people want? Let's be clear. This isn't about gender. This is about corruption, entitlement, and deception. Period. To their credit, the residents of Dalton realized early on that they'd made a mistake. They tried to correct it with a recall campaign that was quickly crushed by a judge. But the community didn't quit. They kept organizing, kept pushing, and in the end, they delivered a landslide victory for trustee Jason House, who was elected mayor by a staggering margin, something like 88-2, a total blowout. And still, a few folks are clinging to the delusion that Henyard was some kind of victim of a witch hunt. If you believe this entire investigation was triggered just because she's a woman doing what men have done for years, then you're not paying attention to what's actually been going on in your own town. Now, before we get to the final act of the saga, the bizarre, theatrical goodbye party she threw for herself, let's look at how this whole mess unraveled. On Easter weekend, as cars lined up for blocks, Henyard held one of her famous food giveaways. Tens of thousands in taxpayer dollars were spent on the event. Once again, her name was stamped on every box. These giveaways weren't about generosity. They were strategic PR stunts meant to buy goodwill. She wanted her face associated with free groceries, not court appearances and ethics violations. She's always claimed that she's the one doing the real work, that the trustees just run their mouths and don't pass anything meaningful. We're in this village till 11 p.m., she'd say. While others are out at the bar, we're working. But when you dig into the ordinances passed, the financial records, the travel audits, it paints a very different picture. The perks? Maxed out. The paycheck? Bloated. The governance? Questionable at best. And this is the important part. None of this is speculation. These aren't allegations, no matter how many times Henyard dismisses them as false accusations. These are confirmed facts from public audits and reports. She manipulated the system for her benefit. Plain and simple. And the theatrics? They've been nonstop. From flashy social media videos to bizarre live streams, everything Henyard did was about image management. Even her exit felt more like a concert to a rap party than the resignation of a disgraced official. Cameras rolling, supporters clapping. Her final food giveaway framed like a legacy event, not a swan song. And yet, she still spins the same narrative. Everything we do is for the people. Let's unpack that. If you're truly for the people, you don't siphon public money into personal luxury. You don't bury transparency. You don't weaponize your office to consolidate power and silence critics. That's not leadership. That's the classic authoritarian left-wing playbook. Strip taxpayers of resources, live large on their dime, then toss them scraps in the form of food giveaways and empty slogans. Sure, she worked late, but so do plenty of public servants, teachers, nurses, sanitation workers, who don't end their shifts with a $600 travel stipend or first-class tickets. Tiffany Henyard built her brand on optics, but in the end, the optics couldn't hide the receipts. And when the receipts came out, the people saw the truth, and they acted. Let's give the residents of Dalton real credit. They didn't just complain online. They mobilized. They showed up. They forced accountability. They turned one of the most brazen displays of local political excess into a textbook case for reform. And yet, the question remains, what's next? Will Henyard try to spin this into a redemption arc? Will she rebrand and return in another political costume? Maybe. But the people are paying attention now. The trust she once rode into office has been shattered, and it wasn't by the media or the trustees or some nebulous group of haters. It was broken by her own actions. The Supermayor show is wrapping up, but the cleanup? That's just beginning. Let's get one thing straight. Those free handouts Tiffany Henyard keeps bragging about, they're not free. They're paid for by the very taxpayers she's been fleecing for years. She paints herself as a benevolent leader, smiling down from billboards plastered across town, her face stamped on every box of food like some kind of monarch offering aid from the throne. But that image, it's just another stunt. And clearly, it didn't fool anyone, because she's now out of office in both Dalton and Thornton Township. Still, in her final days, she keeps playing the same tired game: rob the taxpayers blind, then give them crumbs in return. What's wild is that people who never supported her are still showing up to the food lines. And hey, who can blame them? I didn't vote for her, still won't, one local told me. But if she's giving away free food, I'm not turning it down. It's hilarious and depressing at the same time. Folks know they've been robbed. They know she's taken way more than she's given. And yet here they are, lining up for leftovers from a $300,000 queen. Even local news outlets have tried to defend some of her programs, claiming a few had merit. But let's be honest, that gives her way too much credit. Even the decent initiatives were just vehicles for self-promotion. Every banner, billboard, or flyer screamed one thing: look at me. It was never about the people. It was always about her. And now, we know just how deep the grift went. New records show Henyard pulled in over $347,000 last year alone, more than the mayor of Chicago. Let that sink in. From the numbers, she received $282,000 from Thornton Township. That included a $4,900 monthly expense allowance and a $1,100 vehicle allowance. Meanwhile, Dalton shelled out six figures just to cover 2 SUVs for police to escort Henyard around. We already knew about her base salary, about $225,000 from Thornton and around $50,000 from Dalton. That alone outpaces the salary of the Illinois governor. But wait, there's more. She racked up an additional $75,000 in perks layered on top of that. Let's break this down further. That $4,900 in monthly expenses was pocketed, while she also billed both Dalton and Thornton for overlapping costs. And the $1,100 vehicle allowance? That came from Thornton. But she still charged Dalton for leasing a personal vehicle, under comically awful terms. We're talking about a 2023 Chevy Tahoe, leased for an insane total of $149,146, despite a cash price of just $93,216. 71. That's over $50,000 in interest and fees. The deal is so bad, it's like a teenager with no credit trying to finance a sports car. Nearly a 27% interest rate, fiscally reckless for someone managing public funds. So, instead of using her vehicle allowance to pay for a car, she pockets the cash and sticks the village with financial time bomb. Everything people warned about this woman turned out to be 100% true. Throw all the parties and food giveaways you want, Tiffany. But at the end of the day, you are robbing your constituents blind, not just on salary, but through thousands in monthly extras that went straight into your pocket. And get this, since losing re-election, she hasn't shown up to a single board meeting. When asked why, she dodges a question entirely. She's acting like a sore loser who thinks the job ends once she's voted out, even though she technically still holds office. It's like losing the U.S. presidency in November and then refusing to do anything until Inauguration Day in January. That's the level of petty we're talking about. Instead of showing up for work, she's been dancing at parties, dodging reporters, and celebrating with taxpayer-funded events, while ignoring her actual duties. Former longtime township employee Stephanie Weedman blew the whistle on much of this nonsense. And to this day, Henyard has never offered a real apology, never admitted, "Yeah, I messed up." Instead, she turned her downfall into a reality show. Every 2 weeks, it felt like we were tuning into a new episode of the Supermayor soap opera. And then there were the deflections like clockwork. "Why are y'all attacking a black woman in power?" Supporters cried. "You're the ones costing the village money." Clips like that even made into local news packages. Stolen, by the way, from my own coverage of the Henyard disaster. Let's be real. Being a black woman in power does not give you a pass for corruption. That defense is not only lazy, it's offensive. Henyard wasn't targeted because of her identity. She was investigated because of her behavior. And here's the kicker. She wasn't just mismanaging funds. She was living large. WGN Investigates dug into her travel habits and found she and her crew took first-class trips totaling over $100,000 in late 2023 alone. Lavish stays at the Four Seasons high-end steakhouses and luxury flights, all on the taxpayer's dime. So no, this wasn't a hard-working servant of the people. This was someone who saw a public office as a personal jackpot. And if you think she's going to quietly fade away, think again. The last time she showed up at a Thornton Township board meeting, it ended in a brawl. Yes, she literally jumped into the fight and threw punches. That's how she's choosing to go out. So let's stop pretending this is complicated. The evidence is overwhelming. The salaries, the perks, the travel, the theatrics. This was a grift disguised as governance. A showboat mayor who spent more time crafting her image than crafting policy. The food lines? Just props. The billboards? Just branding. The office? Just a stepping stool for personal gain. Tiffany Henyard didn't care about Dalton or Thornton Township. She cared about Tiffany Henyard. And now that the curtain's falling, the only real question left is how long the cleanup will take. So let's talk about Tiffany Henyard, the self-proclaimed super mayor, and her favorite game, spending your money like it was Monopoly cash. Because yes, she was doing it all on your dime. Here's how she tried to explain it. Straight face at a township board meeting. "I don't handle anything related to credit cards," she said. Out loud, on camera. But when pressed about specific charges, she suddenly switched gears. "Some of those were for you, though." "Excuse me? Who's you?" "Because you, ma'am, were the only one flying to Vegas." What kind of answer is no comment? You can't remember if you were in Las Vegas? Spoiler, she was. And it wasn't paid for with Monopoly money. It was paid for by Thornton Township taxpayers. I get it. WGN Investigates seems to miss the super mayor as much as I do. They're recycling clips I've already shown here, trying to squeeze one last headline out of her downfall. But when a major outlet starts swiping footage from my videos, that's embarrassing. You're the trusted news source, and I'm just here trying to inform and entertain. If you're stealing from me, we've hit a whole new low. But I'll admit, those clips are comedy gold. Why? Because Henyard acted like a kid caught with her hand in the cookie jar, smiling, mugging for the camera, dodging questions with sarcasm instead of substance. There's paper trail after paper trail, showing exactly what she did, and she still refused to take accountability. That's why she went down in flames. Meanwhile, the residents of Dalton and Thornton Township are left footing the bill. Here's another wild one. Henyard and her fellow supervisors were raking in daily stipends for travel. That's on top of salaries and perks. For every day they traveled out of state on township business, they earned an extra $600. In-state, $400 a day, plus full reimbursement for travel expenses. Add it up, and you'll realize her actual annual haul easily surpasses that already bloated $347,000 number we discussed before. The worst part? Henyard would charge these travel expenses to the township's credit cards, collect the daily stipend, and not even use it on the actual expenses. She just pocketed the extra cash. It's a built-in grift, a scam tailor-made for people like her. Even her successor, now running Thornton Township, seems a little too comfortable with these inflated paydays. When asked about his salary and perks, he compared the role to a professional athlete or a doctor. His words, "What you make is based on what you're able to deliver." Translation, I'm not apologizing for the money. The problem? No one's asking for apologies. We're asking for accountability. Now, I've given props to the Village of Dalton's board for pushing back against Henyard and committing to clean up the mess. But don't confuse that with what's happening in Thornton Township. Her successor might be quieter, but don't think for a second he's much different. Same perks, same power structure, just with less noise. So if you live in Thornton Township, don't relax. Stay sharp. The show might be over, but the cleanup is far from done. And even now, after the reckless spending, the sham cancer charity, the FBI investigation, even that infamous board meeting brawl, Henyard still has supporters. That's the truly shocking part. There are people out there actually defending her. You'll hear things like, "She's just doing what men do." Please, show me a man who pulled off this many scandals in one term, just 4 years, and walked away with his career intact. This isn't about gender. It's about ethics. It's about brazen misuse of public trust and taxpayer dollars. But the cult of personality is real. And Tiffany Henyard built herself a brand, complete with flashy giveaways, Instagram-ready events, and nonstop PR. And it worked for a while. Some folks bought the image. But the receipts don't lie. And neither do the indictments that could still be coming. This is what happens when public office becomes a personal hustle. It was never about policy or people. It was about fame, control, and cash. So yeah, political terms are short, but legends like the super mayor, they last forever. Unfortunately, those are my thoughts. What do you think? Drop a comment, hit that like button, subscribe for more, and follow the channel for updates on the ongoing fallout from Henyard's time in power. Because trust me, we're not done with this story.